Hi everyone, YUNOREVIEW Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for another edition of the YUNOREVIEW, where I come on here and I review a bunch of albums that I didn't review. I go through a gauntlet of them for you. That is the concept of the YUNOREVIEW. You should know at this point, because I've done them so many times. So yeah, gauntlet style, short, brief takes on a series of records I did not do full-length reviews of. Let's do it. Ba-bam! I've been kind of plotting on this compilation for a while now, as I've seen quite a few rave reviews of it online, and it is a pretty eclectic mix of artists on this up-and-coming label who are very much in a very lo-fi, experimental, bedroom pop style. And there's some really interesting and creative tracks on here, I'll give it that. If you really love those genres of music, give this thing a shot, do not miss it. However, there are a lot of songs on here, there is a lot of material, there are a lot of different artists on here as well, so with that comes lots of variation in personality and song quality too, especially as quite a few tracks on here are pretty rough or just incredibly nondescript and generic for these lo-fi and bedroom pop genres. So do keep that in mind. But again, if you're crazy about the styles of music, give this thing a shot. I have to give it to Priscilla on this one. There's some legitimately great country songs on this thing. Her voice is fantastic. Production is really tasteful. There are some moments where I think the sound and the style of the album go off the rails a little bit, where she's doing kind of a reggae thing and it's just okay. There are also some tracks on here, legit country tracks, where some like trap drums pop up in the background, which miraculously, it's actually better than Justin Timberlake's recent half-ass attempts at trying to blend pop with trap and hip-hop. So while it's not as consistent and as deeply country as I would like it to be, there are some fantastic moments on this record, and Priscilla is certainly a country artist who I think is worth looking out for in the future. Yeah, I've never heard a Panic at the Disco album I liked. I've never really been a fan of the band. I don't think it's going to start now. I just think I missed that train. You know, I missed it. I can't get on the boat now. You know, I'm just too far gone. Take me out behind the shed and just put me out of my misery. You know, that's all I can say. Despite my enjoyment of stoner metal and doom metal generally, and the consistently positive reviews that Yob seem to garner with each record, and they do seem to be a very consistent band, I just cannot find a whole lot that I find interesting about their stuff. I do appreciate that they try to throw some more interesting chord progressions into their music, that they try to take their songs on these long and massive and epic, like 10+ minute journeys, and some of the soaring vocals worked into these tracks are kind of passionate, almost like something you would hear in a power metal song. I do hear some defining characteristics that separate them from other bands in their genre. I wouldn't necessarily call them meat and potatoes, but I guess I just have a hard time really getting into their stuff and seeing what is so fantastic about it. It's something I just can't quite put my finger on. And unfortunately, there are some groups, there are some albums, there are some records that are like that for me. I'm not really crazy about it. I don't really dislike it either, but I can't really, again, put a finger on what exactly about it is preventing me from really kind of coming through with a definitively positive or negative opinion of the music. That's all I can say. Next, Santigold has a new mixtape out, which is a pretty nice, fun, quirky, raw, little dance hall album. The production and the vocals are pretty predictable and one-dimensional across the entire album, but the record is still very much a fun listen. I guess just don't go into this thing looking for the epic or the finely groomed, potentially mainstream experience of her past couple of albums. It's just low-key fun. Part of me was pretty excited to hear Milo and Elucid of Arm & Hammer fame team up for this pretty short and to the point collaborative effort. It's like 28 minutes or so, and it's obviously a very abstract hip-hop outing. I think there are some cool flows here. There are some funny turns of phrase. There's some smart lyricism too. Some great and creative instrumentals and sampling. There's even a track I'm sampled on. But for the most part, I just didn't really get a whole lot of chemistry between these two guys. Like, hearing them both each do their thing on a track didn't really do much for me, as it just kind of seemed like both of them were in their own little separate esoteric worlds, just trying to be as difficult to read as possible. I mean, I'm not gonna knock it. It's a decent release. It's maybe one of the better abstract underground gems that you'll hear in the hip-hop world this year. But for the most part, the vibe of this album, having these two very unique rappers appear on one track after another, it just felt more casual than it did collaborative. New Neko Case album. I was kind of highly anticipating this record after I enjoyed some of the lead singles to it. But for the most part, I found the album experience to be a little drawn out and underwhelming. This record is nowhere near as sharp and as, I guess, twangy as a lot of the very punchy and fantastic alt-country records that she has dropped up until this point. This album is much more atmospheric and contemplative and introspective. Case has had a pretty long career up until this point. She's given herself a lot to reflect on this album. Longtime fans will most likely get a lot out of that. But there were a lot of moments on this record that I found to be a little bit of a slog, and that's all. Carla's new record over here was one that I was highly anticipating because her last full-length record, Boy, I gave a very positive review to. And yeah, this record certainly fits the bill of its title in that it is very quiet, it is very droney, it is very spacious and ambient, but the drones just don't really have much body, in my opinion. Plus, this record also lacks Carla's fantastic voice, which, I mean, some of it is on here, but not to the degree of which it is on her previous records. And her voice is really one of the more unique characteristics of her music. Yeah, I just found the soundscapes on this record to be very bland. I found the progressions of these songs to be very underwhelming. I didn't think the pretty interesting guests listed as being featured in the track list here really brought all that much to the record either. It just really felt like a somewhat experimental and abstract snoozer. Tony Molina, new album over here. A slightly cleaner and a more mature sequel to his very smart, fun, and 11-minute lo-fi concept album, Dissed and Dismissed. Maybe the shortest breakup album ever recorded. I really love the lo-fi aesthetic of that LP. I love the kind of rough rock sound of that album. This new record over here is much more cleanly recorded, though the songs are still relatively short. I don't know, I just feel like in this attempt to make his sound and style a bit more mature, a bit more palatable, a bit cleaner, Tony has lost a lot of the original appeal of his songwriting and aesthetic. I mean, that's my opinion. On top of it, a lot of the bass elements of his music, the songwriting, the themes that go into his songs haven't really changed all that much at all, which kind of leaves these weird aesthetic shifts feeling like just mere window dressing. In a way, I feel like I'm listening to a squeaky clean, watered down, and more regulated version of the album that I enjoyed just a few years ago. Elza's new album over here is easily going to be one of the most dark and experimental Latin albums you listen to this year if you give it a shot. She made a bit of a comeback with this more experimental sound recently, and I've kind of liked the direction. I respect it. I think it's interesting, though I do think her vocals at this point in her career are a little lacking and just leave a lot to be desired. At this age that she's at, they do feel a bit rusty. However, I think for a lot of longtime fans, that's most likely the appeal. Maybe if her music was something that I grew up with and was kind of a part of my life as I was growing, maybe this record would have more impact on me. but it just doesn't. However, I can certainly see and respect the risks that she's taking on this record, on her previous record, and I want to give a nod to that, and I want to point this album out to anybody who is into Latin music and might be interested in trying an album like this. You know, give it a shot, have an open mind. You might like the vocals more than me. There are certainly enough album reviews that I've done over the years where the vocals do nothing for me, but they do a lot for a lot of other people, so yeah. Dance, Gavin, Dance. Easily one of the most infamous reviews on my channel is a Dance, Gavin, Dance review, and for good reason, because it was pretty negative. However, I gotta give a nod to this record. I gotta give some respect to this record. I gotta put some respect on this record's name, because I do think Dance, Gavin, Dance do their best to actually write some straightforward and cogent songs with tasteful instrumentals on this LP. The songs on this record are a pretty cool blend of screamo and, you know, just like some straightforward emo pop or pop rock. The playing isn't as needlessly flashy or noodly or obnoxious or annoying as it's been on recent releases, and that's a great thing. Though I don't really care for a lot of the vocal styles featured on this record, especially the very high and nasally cleans delivered on a lot of songs. I can see that Dance Gavin Dance have made some great changes and great alterations to their sound, and they are evolving, and yeah, I think this is certainly an improvement, even if this sound and this style, again, isn't even really for me. New Bongripper album over here, certainly heavier and I think more sinister and menacing than their last album, which is a good thing, which I thought was a little underwhelming on the sound side of things, but still, the band's recording, their writing, the guitar tone, the lengthy and gargantuan 2 tracks of this album that accumulate for all of the runtime, it all sounds pretty meat and potatoes. I mean, it's nasty, it's caked in distortion, it's very heavy and aggressive stoner doom, but I just find a lot of the riffs to be a little generic. Again, the drumming to be okay. It's just all right. It's aight. It's okay. It's okay. New Ryan Beatty album over here. Been getting a lot of requests to cover this one, as Ryan has collaborated with Brockhampton on a couple occasions. And yeah, I think this new record of his is okay. If you're into the whole, you know, new neo-soul, white boy soul, you know, bedroom pop kind of vibe, I think Brian brings a lot of good songs to the table. Vocally and instrumentally, I think the record is so-so. It's not really blown me away or anything like that, but there are some sweet tunes on here. I'll give the record that. So if you're a huge Frank Ocean guy or an alternative R&B guy or like a Rex Orange County guy or something like that, I think this record will appeal to you. Give it a shot. It's nice on the ears. It's pleasant. It's just not very standout in my opinion. Sectioned. UK metalcore outfit over here, connected to another metalcore band with a super bombastic sound, bombastic to the point where the albums that they make are just mind-melting. The band Frontierer. Sectioned is maybe only slightly less aggressive and slightly more intelligible in terms of the mix, the vocals, the guitar riffs, the drumming, but still, this record is really a fucking punishment. Like it is so relentlessly aggressive that it just beats the shit out of your eardrums with a sledgehammer. All the songs are really dizzying to the point where they all really buzz by without much in the way of any defining characteristics. It's nearly a noise album in just how abrasive it is in some respects, but still has a kind of one-dimensional production style and tone across the entire thing, whereas I think a noise record would be a bit more creative with the sounds that it presents. Yeah, for a metalcore, for a mathcore album, it's okay, it's decent. I just feel like the band didn't really do enough to just add enough just interesting sounds or compositional elements to these tracks to sweeten the deal, bring a bit more memorability, add some kind of defining characteristics to them, because truth be told, a lot of these tracks just blend together for me, no matter how many times I revisited this album and tried to gain more of a familiarity with it. I've been sitting on this Natalie Prass album for a while, just trying to make it click and trying to make it appeal to me. And while I do think this record is an improvement over her last album in that it's not quite the very airy and middle-of-the-road chamber pop experience that her debut was. There's a bit more of a backing beat to this thing. It's a bit funkier, a bit groovier, a bit more sensual. But as a vocalist and a songwriter, I still find Natalie's songs to be just okay. I think she brings a lot of very tasteful instrumental additions to this record, and for the most part, the songs sound very pleasant and are pretty sweet on the ears, but they just don't stick out to me. They don't stick out, unfortunately. As much as I, again, wanted them to, and I've been revisiting this album for weeks now, waiting for that moment where it's like, whoa, that's really what is special about the album, but unfortunately, it just hasn't happened. New Aminé mixtape, and it's okay, it's decent. It's more of a vibe than anything. The whole feel of the tape is pretty much like the front cover. You're sort of chilling in the car, you're maybe high, and just not wanting a whole lot to go on. So the instrumentals and the tracks on this thing are pretty chill, they're pretty short. He's kind of riffing a lot vocally, seems like maybe even lyrically too, on occasion. You know, he's just kind of throwing stuff out there and seeing what sticks. Not a whole lot of structure or building out, not a lot of sharp pieces of wordplay or rhymes on here either. It's just a very chill, very surface level, very wavy tape. I don't know exactly how one writes a super safe, predictable, and completely not risky at all outlaw country album, but Shooter Jennings did it. Congratulations. Musician, have you given any of these albums a listen? Did you love them? Did you hate them? What would you rate them? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another YUNOREVIEW video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link. Subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, YUNOREVIEW, forever.